Okay, so once you press enable edit and then save that to your document somewhere, then we can get on to our next part, which is manipulating the data and doing whatever we need to do with the data. So if we go back to our PowerPoint slides, so we said what data do we need? So we've done that part, we needed all that stuff. We've got all of the data that we mentioned in here in that league, which is perfect. Obviously, the comparison to league averages we can do in Tableau. That's fine. So now we can just reference the data now that we've got the data quickly. So Understat provides the majority of the data required for this analysis. Any specific metrics not directly available, this can be calculated efficiently using underlying Understat data, which I'm going to show how to do in a minute. And this allows us to use Understat as a primary data source for analysis while maintaining consistency across the data set, and then we can just reference it there at the bottom there. Perfect. That's what we need to do. So I'll go over now what that bit in the middle means, but before we do that quickly, that brings us obviously on to clean and process and refine the data, which is what we're going to do now. And that is where we can then do all the extra bits I just mentioned. So we're going to clean and refine the data, and anything that's not currently available that we need, we can just quickly do now, or we can do it in Tableau if needs be. And I'm just going to change a couple of these column headers because it's just a bit frustrating. Like number shouldn't be number, but it wants to be position. And then obviously doing that, it just makes it easier to read. I'm going to caps lock everything in here as well, just to make it proper. So matches, wins, draws. If I could spell, there should be losses rather than losers. Goals. I'm going to call this goals for, I think, just to make it more understandable. I'm going to call this goals against. I'm going to call this points. XG, so small x, big G, 4. And we'll call this XG against. And that's our expected points. What else we need that we discussed before is we're going to work out our expected positions. We're going to call this expected position. And to do this, all we're simply going to do is just do equals rank AVG. Doesn't really matter which type of rank thing you use for this one. The number that we want, so in this case, we want L2. And the reference, which is basically the rest of the data, so how it ranks in the following list, and the rest of the list is that. Now, the order doesn't matter, that's basically ascending or descending, we don't really matter about that. So we're going to close this because it'll naturally do descending order, so obviously the biggest the better. But in our case, what's really important here is the fact that this is just going to do it for the first one in there. But if we drag this down, obviously this will be wrong because then that then changes to be like that. So every single team is going to be ranked first if we do this all the way down, which is just stupid. Well, not every single team, but like the teams at the top, sorry, will be ranked first. That's obviously not what we need because we kind of all these teams ranked number 1, and that's because we haven't fixed this bit here. So obviously our reference has to stay constant because that's always going to be the reference. So do that in there, and this now should have all the numbers from 1 to 20 in there of how the team's ranked. We then want to have a look at points gained / lost. This is just something we can add in now. We could obviously do that in Tableau if we wanted to, but for the sake of this one, we'll just do points gained / lost, and that's going to be our actual points minus our expected points, and this is how many points that. So, for example, Arsenal got 85 points. They should have got 79.87, so they've gained 5.13. We're going to do the same thing here, but for positions. But this time, it's really important to understand that we're not doing actual minus expected. We're going to do the other way around. That's because points, the bigger the better. So obviously, the more points you have, the better. But for a league position, the lower the number, the better. So obviously 1 is your first and 20 is your last. Obviously 20 is bigger than 1. So we're going to reverse it. So in this one, we want our expected position minus our actual position in there. For example, Arsenal finished where they should have. But for example, here, where we've got Aston Villa, they finished 4th. They should have finished 12th. They finished 8 points higher than they were expected to finish. So now we've got all that in there. We're just going to press save again. Actually, I'm just going to be nitpicky and I'm just going to do some formatting. So we're going to central line all this, make sure that's in there, and that'll do me good. I'm going to press save, and then we're going to go to Tableau for the next part once we've completed our PowerPoint part. Okay, so now we have cleaned and processed and refined the data, and now it's ready to go straight into Tableau, which we're going to use for our data visualization. But first, we also need to remember the fact that we've also got to analyze, explore, evaluate patterns. We'll do that also obviously in Tableau, as well as our visualization, create and engage in visual reports. That'll get done in Tableau as well. The one after that is insights and key findings, but we can only do that once we've already built the Tableau dashboard. So let's get straight on to Tableau, and we'll get going with that in there now. Okay, so once you get a Tableau, you'll get the front page like this. This is just some other dashboards I've been working on, which are quite cool. And if any of you guys want to see any of these, even some F1 one there, and then that's the example of what I'm about to show you now. So sorry, I digress. So once you get this, you want to go to a file. Now, a lot of people, when they're actually doing this in the industry, will use a server, and they'll have a server they're connected to when you're working for a company. Obviously, you don't have that, and then for the example I'm going to show you now, we're just going to use an Excel file. Obviously, as I say, most people have like a recurring server that automatically updates the data for them based off like any software they use, whatever. But we're just going to use Excel for this. So press that Excel bit. I'll come back to you once I open mine because I don't want to show you all my files. Okay, so I'm opening it up in there, and now you can see I've got my like expected points versus points, which is what I've called mine. Now that I've saved it, I'm just going to press open, and that should open it straight away in there. And now once this opens in there, give it a second or two, it should open with the following thing here. And now this has our data in there that we need. We can go to the worksheet, we'll do that in a minute. But this is our data source. So you can double check everything you need if you want to. This is what we've currently got. Obviously, we'll add stuff to it as well. That's fine. This bit here shows the data type it is. For example, that's number, that's like letters or string. And then obviously you've got your different types, like your floats and stuff in there. So what we'll do is we're going to go to our first sheet in there, and then we'll just start playing around with what we need to do. So to do this, we need to go back and look at what we actually needed, if you can't remember. So if you think back, this is what I said before. First thing we're going to do is we're going to plot XG versus point in a scatter plot. So let's do that first and see what we can do. Okay, so obviously to do that, we need sort of like XG, which we've already got. So I'm going to guess that we should just use expected goals for. So let's use that here. And we want to do that as a sum. And we want to compare that against points. Luckily, we've already got both of them, so that's perfect in there. So just points, type that in there, and we can just plot them against each other in there. Now, what you'll notice is this has 1,036 points and an XG4 of 1,162. That's obviously ridiculous, so it's not accurate. First thing I'm going to do is press entire view. The reason it's done that is because it's done it over the entire league. You can then average that, for example, so we can get league averages of these values. But again, that's kind of pointless for a scatter plot. So we're going to go back to our sum in there. And the reason is because it's for the whole league. We want our teams involved in it. So if you go to our team, and what we're going to do is we're going to add that as a detail. Or you can do it as a color if you want to, but we'll add it as a detail for now. And now what you'll find is it does all of the different teams in there. So you can see here, for example, Burnley got 22 points and an XG of 36.94. The important thing now is you can clearly see we can start to get some sort of correlation. We can then make colors if we wanted to. So we press on colors in there, and then what we can do is, annoyingly, we'll have to redo the colors ourselves. For example, Arsenal red. You can do Aston Villa as you put. I know it's going to take quite a while, but you can do that sort of thing in there if you wanted to. Bournemouth red, Brentford, Brighton blue. For the sake of the video, I'm just going to quickly pause this and do this quickly, just so it looks a bit better, just so you can get some sort of visual of this, and I'll come back. Okay, so I've done it in there. Again, it's not really the most beneficial because a lot of teams share the colours, so it's not the best thing in the world. But you can see there we've sort of got everything that we need to. If you want to make these any bigger, you can just do this thing simply here where you can make them bigger. And if you don't want them to have holes in them, you want them to be filled, what you can actually do instead is you can use our circle thing in here and you can get them filled like that. So that's something that interests you. And then as you can see here, the detail gives us a little tooltip, so we can press on there and see it's Burnley straight away. Or you can label them all, but the issue is there's so many clustered that you'll just get this sort of thing. At the minute, the text will show our XG4 value, but you can flip that around if you wanted to and just see the number of points. But again, it's not really important to have our values in there. Or if you wanted to, we could actually get it to say our team name, so we can add our team name to text in there, and then you can get something like that. But again, I'm not sure how beneficial that is. If I was going to do that, I'd probably shorten that slightly. So I'd make it a bit smaller, size 5 maybe, and you get an idea, but it's so clustered that you get that in there. What you can also do if you're interested is you can change the font, so the axis, sorry. Obviously in the industry it's not great to do this because you should have your axes consistent, but for example here, there's nothing here before like, before 36, so we can just start this at 30 if we wanted to, just to make it look a little bit cleaner, so you can custom, and you can just fix the start at 30. And then you can have this as automatic in there and like that, and that'll give you that. And then for example our points, nothing before 20, so we can start this at like 15 for example if you wanted to. That just means you can spread out the data a little bit more, but obviously make sure people are aware you have to always comment on that, because if you're not going to comment on that, then people will get very confused and wonder why you have say, oh, Burnley got no points, but they did. that just starts at 20. So keep an eye out for that. It's obviously really important to have that. What we can then do is if we want to see how well they're correlated. So for example here, our analytics, we can then start to add average lines, for example, if you wanted to. And you can do this sort of thing here where you can get your average, for example. Sunderland were above average for points, but below average for XG4. So they actually did really well considering. Or for example, Palace were above average for goals XG4, but below average for points in there. That gives you an idea if you want to break it down like that. You don't have to, but we'll get rid of that for now. We can then add a little trend line in there if you wanted to. So this will give you a sort of idea. We'll just have it as linear just for the time being. You can sort of see how well teams do. But you can clearly see from that trend line, this is why it's important, that the R squared value is 0.67. So for those of you who don't know about stats or probability, basically R squared value gives you sort of your correlation as such. So it goes between -1 and 1, where 1 is perfectly correlated in a positive fashion. So that would literally be as 1 goes up, the other one goes up, like that. -1 would be like this, negative, and this is sort of like obviously 0.67 because it's almost fully correlated, but it is obviously slightly under. So that gives us an idea. So therefore, there is a clear correlation between XG and our points. That brings us on step number 2. Okay, so step number 2, we wanted to calculate expected points. We've already done that, luckily, because people did that for us. And then we're going to show a league table comparing actual points versus expected points. Should be nice and easy. And then we'll get onto that step number 3, which is we want to identify teams that over underperformed based on these expected points. I'm going to do these two together. I'm going to create a table. Can have points, expected points. Then we're going to show the difference between these two, which we've already calculated already. And then we can color that whatever color we want to, and then we can add under overperformed as a little marker on there. Okay, so we're going to go to our new sheet. So we're going to call this first one XG versus points. And then we're going to make a new sheet in there, and we're going to call this one points versus expected points. Now, as I said, we're going to add our points in there. So we're just going to put points, and then both of them should come up. So points is what we want. We also want expected points, so XPTS. We want that in there. We also then want to include our points gained or lost, of course, which is really important. And then I'm going to add 1 at the end as well. Then remember, again, we're going to have our team. But this time we're going to have our team as our rows, which is what we want in there. And that'll give us this. Now, it's quite a cool visual, and you can have something cool in there. But what we're going to do, just for the purpose of this, is we're going to have this as text. So we don't want it to be like a mark like that. We just want it to be text in there. So you can press text. And then we can just do that way. Or what we can do there is we're just going to change this to an actual table like this, just to make it a little bit easier. We can then make this entire view. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press format, and I'm going to centrally align this in there just to make it look a bit cooler and a bit cleaner, I should say. No, it's not really that cool, is it? I'm going to do the same for the team name in there. Then what we're going to do is we've got our points, but obviously points is pointless having as like decimal places because you don't really need them. We're going to change the order in there, so we're just going to put expected point in the middle bit, and then we're going to go to our points thing, which is here. We're going to format that, or we can just do it over here. So points, and then we're going to press default properties, number format, and then we're just going to go custom, number custom, 0 decimal places, okay, and that'll fix that in there. Our expected points, probably happy with it as the way it is because it's decimal points, that's fine. Our points gained and lost, again, we'll need to have a decimal point in there. What we're maybe going to do, which will be quite cool, we can maybe color these based off our expected points gained or lost. But we're going to add something called over underperforming. So we're going to go points over / underperformance. Or we'll do under overperformance, and then we'll actually put that point in brackets actually. Now this is going to be a little if statement. We're going to say if points, well, we want the sum actually, if sum points gained / lost. Now if that is less than 0, so greater than 0, then they've obviously overperformed. So we're going to say overperformed. Then we're going to say else if, else if same thing again, but we're going to put this the other way around. So if it's less than 0, underperformed, and then the else here is just going to be, it's very rare, but if it's exactly the exact amount of points we're supposed to get, we're just going to be points as expected, or performed as expected. Perfect. I'm not sure if this needs a space in between, but I'm not going to put anything in for now. And I'm actually going to end this with an end. And that'll work in there, so that calculation is valid, perfect, press OK. And then what we're going to do is add this to here. So we're going to add this to our measure values at the bottom, somewhere in there, and that should hopefully, I say that with confidence, put that in, or we can put it somewhere we need to put it in. But with this being a discrete rather as a text value, rather than being a measure value, what we're going to do just for the sake of this is we're just going to put it there, and it'll still be in there. As you can see, it looks a bit daft there, so I'm going to make that slightly bigger, and then to make this full size. Now you can have it as points in there, but then again it looks a bit silly, but we'll just do that, and that should just work. Over underperformance, and you got our over unders. Now it's quite hard to see now, so what we're going to maybe do is we can have a look at color coding this based off the value, so you can do anything you want to, but I think our over underperformance thing is probably the best thing because it's easy right now. Just press color, and then what we can do is we can then just like either color the whole thing, or what we can do in there if you want to is we can maybe do those individually, so you can do all these individually, so it's quite cool. So if I put our measure values here, so you can just search measure values if you wanted to again, or you can just grab that one into color. Then what you can see here is you can see they're all individual. But if I then right click on here and I go use separate legends, we then get all three as separate legends. For example, our points, you just want this to be black, don't you? So the best way, there's a gray one, but obviously it's not really what we want. So we're going to go custom divergent, and I'm just going to pick black and black on both sides of it. And then I'm going to do stepped color, and then just have that as 2, and that'll literally give us black. If there's any other way around that, then please let me know because it's quite irritating, but that should do the job. Black, black, and then steps 2. And then this thing, obviously, we want this to be like red-green divergent if we can, giving us our positive and negative, our advanced, our center needs to always be 0, and then we'll maybe add another one in there, press OK, and that gives us a cool little thing in there. But maybe you want this to be like a square, so rather than being that, maybe we want our figures to be a square, and that gives us a cool little thing in there. Obviously, that looks a bit daft with our points and expected points, so maybe we can get rid of that bit and make this white, or we can, say for example, we go white in there, just make it look more normal again, with black text, and we can do the same thing for our expected points, where you probably want this to be white and white. If I'd actually pressed apply, that would have helped. Press OK or apply, and there you go. So now you can see all of our teams in there, and now you probably don't need this over underperformance thing in the data anymore because you don't really need it. You can tell by the colors, so we can just press remove in there, keep that in there, and now immediately we start to get a team points, expected points, and you can see our points gained / lost in there with a color coded bit, which looks quite cool. So now I believe that we've showed the relationship between XG and points. We've looked at points versus expected points versus actual points, and identified under or over performers based off that. And again, you can keep that text bit in there if you want to. You can count if they have, but the color should do the job there. It's nice and visual and really quick to see. The next thing is to find out expected league position. We've already worked out our expected position, luckily. And we did that in our Excel thing, but let's compare this to their actual finishing position. Do the same thing we just did before. So for this, what we're actually going to do is we're just going to press right click and duplicate the sheet. And now this is position. Now, of course, the colors will probably match anyway as such, but there'll be more 0 or more as expected in this one because the probability of it having the actual position and the expected position is way higher than the expected points. So all we're going to do here is we want to just change our points to position. So position here. our expected position should go here, and our positions gained lost should be here as such. Now the color schemes are in there again. We're just going to do the same thing again here, but I'm going to go really quick. Except we want this to be like that. And then we'll do the same thing here again. So step colors, 2 steps, custom diverging, white and white. Press OK. And then obviously again here you want this to be 6 steps, red, green, divergent. Okay. And then obviously ensure that 0 is your midpoint in this as well, or your center. But remember, this is now doing this based off positions gained, lost, that's fine. Or you could do a case of, if you wanted to, so this is currently got greens and stuff which you don't really want. We need our over underperformance, and then we're just going to duplicate that. And then we're going to press edit. Then once you've got that, you can then change this to position. And then just change this to position gain / lost. Get rid of this bit because we don't need that. And then again, just change this to positions gain / lost. Okay. And then our color now shouldn't be based off measure values. It should instead be based off this thing here. So you can then put this in if you wanted to as like our over underperformance position. Again, you can put that in there, performed as expected, whatever, or you can then even color by this. So you can color by that if you wanted to. So you can do a case of like red this thing, but it looks a bit silly as it is there in there. But we'll just leave it as it is for the time being with that sort of thing. That's ideal enough for us. Probably want our midpoint to be like that maybe, and that gives us our value in there. And then for the positions ones, so I'm just thinking out loud here as I go, you probably want to number format that. You don't need any decimal points when you're talking about positions because it just is a position. So we can do that in there. And again, for our positions gained lost, you can do that again here, number format, custom, and then just do that in there. Now what we can do is, I think it's then important, if we just go back to our PowerPoint. So now we've kind of done all this stuff, but then now it's important to do the insights, summaries, and takeaways. So now what I'm going to do is look for patterns and stuff in there and show you some proper Tableau stuff. And that stuff was quite basic just to cover the initial thing we needed to see. But let's now have a look at some more complex top 5, bottom 5 sort of data. Okay, so when we're in here, what we maybe want to do here is we want to plot our teams based off like top 5, bottom 5 points gained or positions gained. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. So if you open up again here, you're going to go for entire view. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to put our team in there. And we're going to have this as our column. So as our rows, sorry. Then we want to then have we'll do points gains lost for starters. Put that in there as our columns. And as you can see here, that's quite cool. But we want to have a top 5, bottom 5, just to get an idea of who's over underperformed the most. So bottom 5, I'm going to call this that in there. Now what we want to do here is we're going to have our colors being our points gained lost in there, and we want to do this custom diverging, so red green divergent, sorry, like that, and our middle needs to always be 0. Press OK. We're then going to get our team, and then we're going to press sort, and we want to sort this by a field, and the field that we want to do it is by points gained lost. You want to change that, you can change that, but ours is points gained lost. We want ours to be descending because we want the best at the top. And then so Aston Villa, then Sunderland, yada yada. This slightly bigger should get all the team names in if we can. I think that's everyone's team's names in. I'm going to format this just to be centrally aligned. And our header as well. Perfect in there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add a little label in there. Now our text label should show the points gained and lost. We're going to make this slightly smaller, it's probably size 7 in there. And you can see you can read them, but it's a bit harder. So what we're going to do here is on here, you either would change this to white to make it more visual in terms of the text. So for example here, white might fit it. But I'm actually going to press match mark color. That might look daft because you can't read it, but I'm going to do that because if we then go here, alignment, and we're going to pick horizontal, and you can do like this on the outside. So that then means you can get it on the outside and it's more visual in there, and you can actually see what you're dealing with. Now, obviously having them all in the same data set is quite cool. You can see everything quickly. You can look for your team. You can see how well you underperformed your points based on what you expected. You can see Villa at the top, Wolves at the bottom. But let's say we only wanted the top 5 and bottom 5 here just to make it a bit more visual. Top 3, bottom 3, but we'll do top 5, bottom 5 in there. This is when it's really important to then use our create calculated field. And what we're going to do is we're going to do top 5, bottom 5 points. Now what we're going to do in this thing is we're just going to say if rank, and our expression is our sum of points gained / lost. Now we want this to be descending. Now if the rank of that, so basically if the rank, sorry, I've put an extra thing in there. All this basically does is if the rank of the sum of this value when it's descended, so if it's less than or equal to 5, then true. That means if it's in the top 5, then it's true. Else if the rank is in the top 5 when it's done ascending, so that means the bottom 5 teams, so ASC, then true. Else false end. Now what this should do, if done correctly, is our top 5, bottom 5 should then work in there, and then everything else in the middle will just drop away. So I press OK in there here, drag this into our filters, filter it to only be true, and now we only get our top 5 and our bottom 5 in there as expected. Now if to show you how this works exactly, if I duplicate that, and I'm only going to have my top 5, for example, so if I want top 5 points, then we will get rid of the second one, keep the first one, press OK, then we can just drag that in there and replace that. And if you only had true here, only our top 5 should stay because they rank as the best within that thing there. So here's our best overperformers, and that includes our best underperformers, and that sort of does everything that we need to see, and it's way more visual than having this sort of thing here. That's quite visual itself, but if you want to know our initial top 5, bottom 5 rapid, who underperformed the most, there you can see it straight away. So that's quite a cool little feature you can do there. Now you can do the same thing again if you want to with position, but it's a bit more complicated. I'll show you why here. So do position here, and then we'll do positions gained lost. If I was summing, oopsies. Positions gained lost in there, and our positions gained lost up here. And then the same thing here, you can just edit colors, step colors 6, custom divergent to be, sorry, red green divergent I should say, center at 0. And then now obviously our top 5, bottom 5, we need to change that filter to be position. So duplicate that and then edit that and then just rename this position. He says position, and then obviously change your points to positions there. Then press OK. But the issue is now if we do that, sorry, I need to also sort out team rather than by points gain lost. We want this by positions gain lost in there. Remove this filter. This will give you every single team in there. Now the 3 teams that will bang on: Man City, Man United, and Arsenal is top 3. But now the issue is like your top 5, bottom 5 is going to have all these in it because even though there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the issue is they're all equal. So that's how it ranks. They're going to rank 4th equal, if that makes sense. So 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th are going to rank 4th equal. So now if I put this in here, the same for the bottom one here. So we're going to have all of these in here. So it basically makes no difference because, so even though it is top 5, bottom 5, we've got more than 5 on either side because a lot of them have equal values. So this only really works better when you're doing something like points, where you've got decimal places and the numbers are going to be very, very unlikely to be the same value. But this just does show you that Sunderland overperformed by 11 positions. Now, it's less points than Aston Villa, but then it's way more positions because Villa got up 8 points, 8 positions, sorry. But that then means we can go to this, and maybe it's important to then look at this, and then we can plot this by, we can sort this, for example, by points gained, lost. That gives Aston Villa, and we can immediately see they got 65, but they should have got 51. So quite cool to visualize it that way. Again, make this slightly bigger so you can get all the team names in. Wolves have got massive team names, so there you go. And you can do the same thing for position, where I want to just press this button there to sort by it, and then we can just do that there again. So you can see here that obviously Sunderland was supposed to finish 7th, so they got Europe, and they were supposed to finish 18th based off data, so they would have got relegated based off data, which I'm guessing means that West Ham was supposed to go down and should have finished 16th. So there you go. And Tottenham was supposed to finish 13th and finish 17th. So there you go. So that gives us an indication of, like, for example, now, this is where it's really important. So we can build our dashboard, and I'll show you how that brings us to the next point. Because we're currently in the stage of visualizing and creating and engaging the report. But the next point, of course, is to look at the insight. So, for example, why did Sunderland finish 7th, but they should have finished 18th? Why did they actually finish 7th? Well, it's really, really, really easy to look at that. I'm going to show you in a minute once we've made the dashboard. So as I say, now we've got sort of what we need. Let's start building a dashboard. So press this button here, and we're just going to call this performance versus expected. Now I want to make the size of this automatic so it fills the whole screen. And then you can just start dragging and dropping your stuff in there. Now I like to do floating. You can do whatever you want. We can start to add in filters as well if you want in a minute, but I'm going to show you this first. So now a lot of the times in dashboards I've made, so we're going to show you another dashboard I've made. So this is the dashboard that I made. If you go back to my channel, so if we go to videos in here, and as you can see here, for example, this video here, the build a Prosson distribution football model, obviously 20,000 of you loved it. One of the was I converted the Excel file that we had at the end of it. I'm not going to sit and go through it, but the Excel file at the end of it, I turned into a dashboard. And now that's what this is, and it has a cool little background on it. So rather than looking like a dashboard, these are all individual sheets. So this obviously took ages of opening a new sheet. That's sheet 45, so it has 44 different sheets involved in this. It's quite cool. It has your date and then your game. You can change the game and it'll change the data. Then you can have all the probabilities, the goals, both teams to score, everything like that. And when you, so I'm in the interface here, so it doesn't look as good. But if I just press this and go to scoreline sheet, which has all this stuff in it, which is like your matrix, and then you can get all these things to update themselves automatically. You get your stat ranking, so you get a ranking of all the best stats. No matter what the stat is, it'll just rank it based off that, which is quite cool. Then our advanced analytics, this bit obviously took ages, because I had to build an entire AI summary to do it itself, but that was pretty cool. Just gives you a little snapshot of the entire thing you need to see, which is really, really cool. But that then uses a cool little background, so you can do that if you want to and get the cool visuals. And now on, we're just going to get the data that we need and just pass it on to the CEO or whoever it is that's dealing with the data, just to make it a little bit easier. But that is available for you to do in there if that interests you. And also, if you want to see a step-by-step of how to do that, please let us know in the comments section. Just like comment something like, please show us the Prosson distribution dashboard, please, thank you. Something like that. I have no idea. It's whatever you want. As I say, you can do that, make a background, but for our instance, we're just going to drop in our XG versus points, and now obviously you can have your colours in there if you want to. Now, I don't know how relevant this one actually is, but you can sort of get that. I don't know if it's worth keeping all them in, but maybe it's probably beneficial to have these slightly smaller. So just press this to go to sheet, and then you can just go size. Obviously, made them big to show you something, but then just conscious we can't really get everybody on there. No, you can't really see the colours at that point, but the minute Leeds and Newcastle are not getting on there, but that's probably the best we can do to get nearly everyone on there, but that's fine. So you can see here our expected XG versus points is on there. We'll get our points versus expected points on there as well. Now we don't really need these to be, the colour schemes to be there. I think it's quite self-explanatory. We can then do our change this name to position. versus expected position. Drop that on there as well. Now the width of it's a bit too wide, so I'm going to just make it. Cool. Now I have to be experimental with this because we can't fit everything in there. So what I'll probably do is just drop this because we need to fit in our top 5, bottom 5s in there as well. So let's say that we do this here. No, we need that to be a bit larger, so maybe that there. And then we can do our points here. Like so, you can just drag down if needs be. Our expected points there. Something like that. Just trying to think how we can incorporate this to make it look good. Obviously, make that standard. Not standard where you can just scroll down and see what you need to see, but let's just say we want to fit width in there, make it that sort of wide. It's the same thing here, just press fit width. Now that's width that 624, so it's not really very fair, but that's fine. Now the titles, you can't really read them anymore either, but then that means we can just drop in our sort of top 5, bottom 5 here and here. Right, now we're probably going to have to do some formatting just to make this work a bit better. So our header is probably going to have to be size 5 or something ridiculous like that. We probably make this slightly smaller. This is just you learning everything you need to learn because I'm trying to think out loud here. So make that size 6. Then by doing that, we probably just go to Wolves because there are ones that struggle to fit in. You can get that. There you go. Just about fits in there. Make this in there. There you go. You can see everything you need to see. That's fine. You probably don't want these things to be as big as they are, but that'll be fine. The same thing here. So format that to be, was that size 6? So the same thing here, size 6 font. And then again, go to Wolves, wherever the hell Wolves are. There they are. And then again, we're just going to format this and make these all size 5. Position's obviously a bit of a bigger word, so that's not ideal. I think if we just have Wolverhampton W, you can probably see what I'm talking about. So there you go. That gives us our position versus expected position. You can see everything you need to see in there. Top 5, bottom 5. Underachievers and overachievers in there. So that does work, but it's just about working out the visuals in there. Or do we need more than one sheet? So let's have a look. This is where it's important to just be rational. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a different, so we're going to have a sheet that's just dedicated to our XG versus points. I'm just going to have space in because it already exists. We're going to make this automatic, and I'm just going to drag this in as tiled because we're only going to have that in there. No, we're not. That's the wrong sheet. So we want this to be our XG versus points. And what you can do is you can keep that in there. We don't really need that. So we're going to press X in there. And now we've actually got... Sorry, I need to get rid of this bit. Managed to fit Leeds and Newcastle in there. So that's ideal. Wolves, for some reason, isn't in there, which is a bit strange. But it's fine. Nonetheless, that works as it needs to. That's probably because if I edit this axis and I make this 10, maybe fit Wolves on there. No, it still won't fit. That's fine. Probably because it needs to fit next to exactly where Burnley are. But that means you can see immediately what we need to see there. So that's fine. We can make it floating if needs be. And we can sort of just press here. Then we want to floating. And then we'll just make it the entire sheet. And that just means we can have a bit more flexibility with moving it. It's only that on the sheet. We can get rid of that box. We don't need that container. And then we can just pop that in there like that. XG versus points just as we need it. So that's fine. We're going to get another sheet. Let's go back to this one, for example. going to call this overview. And then I'm going to allow each page to link to each page. So, example, then our XG versus points, you can see immediately there. Let's make a dashboard called points. Now on the point sheet, this is where we can get creative and we can start fitting multiple stuff on the same sheet. Where we can have a look at our points here. So I'm going to do this floating, so our points raw data is in there. So we can grab that, put it in there. And you can see every single team as you need to. And then we can do our top 5, bottom 5 points, the bottom bit here. But now what I actually think is more important and what could work a little better, you don't need the width. So I'm just going to change this in here to fit about there. And our top 5, bottom 5 points can then just drop in there like so. And then immediately there, you can see all your data you need to see on points. So if you're looking for a specific club, you can see the data is Tottenham there. If you want to look at our best over and underperforming ones in there, you can see that in there. And then we'll do exactly the same thing for our positions. So what I'm going to actually do here is just press hide all sheets. And then I'm going to press hide all sheets. And that'll hide the ones we have. So we only get the ones we need showing up. Now I'll call this position. And I'm going to make this automatic. And then we're just going to go here. And I'm going to check the size of this. So that's fine. We want to drop in the dashboards items that we need. So this one was first, and then this one over there. And then this is the cool little trick you can do if you want to. Want to make these the same size. So it's 25, 102, 536, 248. So, sorry, that's the wrong one. 12, 16, 751, 728. So, I think that was right, but I could be completely wrong. We'll find out now. Good memory, thank God. Then do the same thing on this bit over here. So it's 79120. Let's do this one by one this time. 807726. And then you get that. Perfect. Now, obviously, this still doesn't look great, but then we can start to hide things now again because you don't need everything in there. Our overview gives us everything that we need. So our XG versus points, it doesn't look great, but that's fine. We get everything we sort of need at a glance if you want to have a look at that. But now if we can, I'm just going to tidy this up slightly. So we're going to just center align this, change the names if needs be. I want to maybe underline it as well. So I'm going to bold and underline that. And that. Now you sort of get an idea of what we need to see, so that's good. It needs to be the same height in there, so we won't be able to fit in our filters. So this is what sort of height is this? It is a 42 and it's 295, so 42, 295. I don't know why I didn't just type it. This is at 345 and it is 371. That's fine in there. Obviously the width probably isn't perfect in there. What's that width? 58439. So obviously the advantage of doing it as a tiled thing is it just sort of fills all this automatically for you, but this is just how I like to do it. It's a bit of extra work, but it just means it's perfect. 994602. So I think that looks pretty good now, to be fair. You get your points, XG versus points there. You've got all of your points data in the middle and then your position data at the end. So that's kind of what we needed. We're then going to add filters to this because why would you not? So we're just going to go here. You can use a filter or we can just go to the sheets. So let's think about what we actually want to see here. So teams, obviously, we want to see. And now the team thing, we want to make that available for every sheet. So apply to worksheets. Probably want all using this data source because we want this to transpire across the whole thing. We want to have a look at maybe our this one. You can include points, expected points. There's a range, that's fine. Expected points. Same thing again there. Points gained lost. You could want in there maybe as your thing. Points gained lost. And to be honest with you, we can probably add this to every sheet just to make sure that it applies to all the sheets. So we can just sort of get all these filters to apply along. And for position, you probably want the same thing here. So you probably want your positions gained lost, expected position. And then we can also add in our top 5, bottom 5 position in there. Sorry, we've already got that to be fair, but we can drop that in there to be true or false, but we can just press OK, and then we can just sort of, oh sorry, at the minute we want this to be, want everything there, so I'm just going to put true and false, and that should keep all the data in there. Then what we can do is then add this to every other sheet if needs be, but for the time being we'll just leave that as it is. Then I'm going to just press this. I'm just going to press apply to worksheets, all using this data source. Now that should work for the time being. Let's just double check everything's where we need it to be. So again, there's this. Oops. That's fine, all using this data. That's what the little dot thing there means. And then all these ones again. There you go. So now we've got all of our filters that we need in there. So all we need to do for this initial sheet is then going to go to like filters and add whatever we want. So points. We can add in everything basically. So no matter what you want, we can sort of drill down to anything that we need in there. Oops. Obviously make this slightly cleaner, so let's take our team for a starter and put this over here. Then we want to resize, right click, customize, have an apply button, and then we also want to have this multiple value drop down list. Perfect. Then for example, actually I'm going to move that up slightly so we can get the whole thing in there. And we are just going to center align it. Then we could also have we want expected points can just lie over there somewhere. It's not that important. Basically, I'm just going to refiddle these and I'll come back once I've rejigged them. Okay, so that should do it in there. I've rejigged them as such and get them in the right place. Apart from that one looks really big for some reason. Not sure why that looks as big as it does. It's a different font, that's why. No, it's not. It just looks really big. I'm not sure why that's happened. That's strange. I'm not sure why. But that's fine. So what I'll do now is, for example, if I wanted to just filter this by certain teams like Arsenal, Man United, Man City, like we said now, then it should hopefully apply for the whole thing. As you can see here, then it applies perfectly. So this is how they go on the line there. That's the sort of correlation between them. Here's the points versus expected, positions gained, lost. The top 3, bottom 3, obviously they're all going to be 0 because positions are all the same. Points gained, lost. So Man United gained the most, then Arsenal and City. For example, then if you want to then look at, I don't know, our only teams who got less than 40 points. Oops, there you go. So that's the case for all of them, actually. Hopefully make sure that's all using this data source. All using this data source, that's fine. Obviously, you can add in way more filters if you wanted to. It's not always going to be this many filters. Sometimes it's way less filters. Sometimes it's only what you're interested in. But this just means all the analysis we can see is very, very quick. So there's only teams who got less than 40 points. Let's change that to 45. Spurs should be in the mix. And Nottingham Forest actually as well. There you go. So you can get everything you need there. So initially we can see that Wolves and Burnley really, really underperformed there because the XG compared to the points is bad. Forest with quite a big overperformance and kind of Tottenham in there as well. And that reflects in this bit here where Forest got more points than expected. Those Spurs underperformed slightly. So Spurs must have conceded quite a few goals. What we can then do is once you've got this, I don't know why it won't let me get off there, perfect. We could even just want to look at teams who, for example, gained at least 4 positions. There's only a team, so Sunderland, Villa and Fulham are the 3 teams in there. Actually forgot to make this entire view. So there you go. It's quite interesting. So I think that's quite a cool little thing in there. We've made that dashboard in what, a couple of seconds. Well, a couple of minutes, been about 51 minutes, but I promised you 20. But it's just cool just to get a little graphic in there which shows you everything you need to see. But now let's start answering our questions. So the first key insight that we can see is, for example, here, Sunderland should have got relegated, but they finished in Europe. So your first question here is why. So what we're going to do is take Sunderland and let's have a little analysis of them quickly. So if I look at Sunderland in here, so let's have team. I'm just going to drop that in there, and then we're just going to filter this team to be Sunderland. So let's edit the filter and just let's select Sunderland in there. So none, and let's have it as Sunderland. If my spelling was remotely good. So we'll put that as Sunderland, press OK. You can see Sunderland are in there. And let's just have a look at any of the raw data. So let's have a look at goals for, goals against. We also want our XG for and against. Put that in a table and then just obviously make that entire view. Now what we can originally see, if we just format that actually, I want to just make all that essentially aligned. We can quickly analyze the data and then somebody would say to you, so why is Sunderland performing so poorly? Well, you can immediately see that the reason they're doing so poorly is I'm going to add in XG for difference. And then we want to do exactly the same thing in here. So press. So we want to do our goal sum goals for minus sum XG4. And then we're just going to duplicate that and then do this for against. And now I'll press OK there again. That should hopefully do that job. And then what we can then do is just going to add in our goals for and against difference. So our goals for difference, our goals against difference. And obviously now it has actually rejigged all this data. So let's have a look what we need. To pull us up in here, we want goals for to come first, then XG4, then goals against. There you go, perfect. That's what we need. Now, we'll keep these as decimals for the time. We shouldn't, actually, no, we shouldn't. We're just going to change them, actually, so. Because the goals is a distinct property that has to have an actual value. Now, I know this has been long, so I do apologise, but hopefully it gives you full insight into what we're doing. I've actually made that currency. There you go. And then we're going to do some colours in there again. So what I can immediately see really, really quickly is you can see Sunderland scored 42, expected to score 43.14, so that underperformed slightly. Let's add some colours in here. So let's do our measure values as colours. So measure values. Drop them in as a colour. And then we're going to give them different legends again, like we said before. Goals for, we're just going to keep that being. I'm going to pause the video now while I make them all black, but I'll come back in 2 minutes. I'm actually going to make them white because I want them to be squares again, just to make it look a little bit cooler. But yeah, I'll be back in 2 seconds. Okay, I've done all that now, and I'm just going to press square, and then I just need to do these ones now. I'm at this point. And then, that is not correct. Why has it done that? Oh, it's reversed. There you go. Perfect. So it should be red. And then same thing here. Obviously, the hard thing with the custom thing here is the fact that we've only got one value, so the center again needs to be 0. But this time, again, the reverse thing's a good thing because you want to concede less. Is obviously a good thing. So there you go. So you can see the reason Sunderland did so well, we can see really quickly, is Sunderland scored 42. We're expected to score 43, so underperformed slightly. But they conceded 48. We're supposed to concede 60.34 based off XG data. So overperformed by 12 goals conceded. Now, obviously, initially you think, oh, it means a good defence. It actually doesn't mean a good defence because they're still giving up the chances of that level of expected goals. It basically means either the other team are really bad at finishing, which over the entire season, every single team being bad at finishing is quite slim. What it probably means is Sunderland's goalkeeper, Robin Roofs, was actually very, very good last season, and that's the reason they stayed up. That's essentially what you can take from this sort of analysis, I would say. Obviously, then you can look in more detail, look at his save percentage to back that up. But my initial thing there is that's the reason why Sunderland overperformed so well, is because they were so good in this area here. Because that area is not actually the best. If that makes any sense, that's the sort of thing you can start analysing in more detail. And then you can look at maybe make an extra sheet code like Sunderland specific. If I could spell, and you can add that to your dashboard as well, or that sort of thing. Make this a Sunderland dashboard, and you can sort of do this in here. So, for example, you can automatic. You can do the exact same thing with Aston Villa as well. I'm going to make this tile just because we're not going to have any sort of filters on this page. You just sort of want that in there. You can see straight away if we get rid of all these, you don't really need any of these. That's the reason Sunderland did that. You could do the same thing for Aston Villa if you wanted to. So, for example, if I went back to the if we're doing a team analysis or goals analysis. Obviously, this is now filtered to Sunderland. You can do this for every single team you wanted to, so you can have a look at every team. And then we can sort of you can sort it in there if you want. So let's have a look at the teams where the goalkeeper did the best as such. Nottingham Forest, so obviously, there you go. Man City, Donnarumma's obviously done really well there in Man City. So normally you see a upper echelon of goalkeepers. Tottenham are actually the only team under. Obviously, remember, your XG against will always be so players will not always score every single chance, so you should normally always concede less than expected because the probability of a player scoring could be quite high. Players won't score every single chance. But let's have a look and then the reverse for this, you should always underperform. But Crystal Palace, wow, so Crystal Palace should have scored 62 and only scored 41 goals. It's quite alarming, but they did quite well defensively. Let's have a look. Crystal Palace actually have a look in there. I'm actually going to change this as well because it shouldn't be something specific. It should be goals analysis. So let's have a little look in there at Crystal Palace. So let's filter this to be Crystal Palace and see. Well, I'll just have a look at Palace specifically. So Palace are here. Wow, so yeah, goals scored compared to points. XG, sorry, they underperformed massively, as you can see there. Do Palace appear in any of these? So, they do. So there you go. 8 points less than. Oh, we could have obviously just gone in this, but then have a look at Palace. 8 points less than expected. We filter this to be. Now this obviously this line will be completely void now because it's like that. But so yeah, they should have finished 11th. They actually finished 15th, but obviously they won the European trophies. They won't care. They got 8 points less than expected, and we go back to that. That's probably, well, it is actually based on what we've seen, down to their limitations in front of goal as opposed to defensively, where they're actually quite good. So that's the sort of thing you can start to analyze, and then given that, I say I've waffled on quite a bit here, so I do apologise, but I'm giving you full insight as a data analyst. We've made this, all this thing's been made in less than an hour, which is quite reasonable within the workplace. Normally you'll get a couple of days to work on this sort of thing, but I've kind of flown through it. But let's go back to our PowerPoint and see what we can add in. Okay, so rather than showing you the PowerPoint slides, now I can go to the actual slide master as such of what I'm making. So now if we go to this bit, we've cleaned the data, we've analysed it as such, we visualize it. Let's have a look at the key insights that we found and decision and action. So if we go back to what we were asked, now obviously we were asked efficiency. It's hard because this asked us as a specific club, but we weren't given a club to do it at. So we're just going to do this as like we've looked at club level, for example, with Sunderland and Crystal Palace. We do the same thing with Aston Villa, for example. So in here, if we just had a look at Villa, I'm just going to make this big enough so Wolverhampton Wanderers can fit on. Let's have a look at Aston Villa. So Villa on here. So the reason they did so well, they scored basically as expected, which is one of the best in the league. So the third best for finishing. As you can see here, and they did pretty well there defensively. What I might actually also do while I'm here, just working on this as off the cuff, might be worth adding in for each team an attacking rating and a defensive rating as ranking. Sorry. So for goals scored and goals against, let's see how well they ranked. Tottenham should rank 1 for this, and they should rank bottom actually for XG against. So let's add that in as well. So let's go to this sheet in here. And now let's have a look. Let's make a calculated field. I think off the top of my head here, so I've not even remotely prepped this bit. So let's make a attack and ranking. Now we want to rank them based off their goal difference. So rank, the expression is going to be called again XG4 difference, and we want to rank it from highest to lowest, don't we? Because the higher it is, the better. So we want this to be descending. Add that in there, so we can just add that. So attacking thing ranking in there. You can see obviously there what obviously because I've currently got this ordered. So if I just go back to rank, I'm gonna default properties this number format. Make this just like that, and I'm going to duplicate that for defensive. So duplicate that, edit that, and then obviously that then needs to be XG against difference. But then we want this to be ascending, don't we? So if I do that now, I think that should then Spurs should be 20th for this. So if this works, Spurs should be 20th, I think. There you go, perfect. Then what do we do on the colours, do you think? Because I'm not sure that's the best thing. So attack and ranking. We'll just do the same thing again. Red, green, divergent. 6 steps an hour. but the center shouldn't be 0, the center should now be 10. But we need this one to be reversed. He says, where's that? Reverse, there you go, cool. Perfect. I've just reversed something else in here as well. I've accidentally reversed that XG4 difference. That was not supposed to be reversed. And then if I go to this defensive thing, we then want to do the same thing again, just reverse that red-green divergence, middle point of 10, and 6 steps in there. And that should be perfect. There you go. I'm happy with that. So now if we go back to our analysis sheet, you can then immediately see, I might have to make some of this smaller to make it fit. So let's just do that quickly. So again, format here, font, let's make this size 7 font instead. And that'll probably fit as we need it. Perfect. The only issue is this says, like, obviously because it's a table calculations, that's a bit annoying. So what that means basically is if I only have like 3 teams in, I'll just do the 3 teams. So obviously you can fix the rankings if you want. So Palace are ranked 20th. But then if I then had only Crystal Palace and Brighton and Bournemouth, for example, in this, then basically Palace will rank 3rd rather than 20th. Because the 3rd of the list. Now to keep that in, you then got to do really complicated stuff. You fix the values and have a level of detail. I'm not going to go into that sort of stuff today because it's quite complicated. So that's what that means in there. But now you can see immediately, I might just edit the alias here because you don't really want all this stuff in it. So attack and ranking. And then we'll call this defensive ranking. So edit the alias. Because it calls it everything it's called in there, which is quite irritating. So, and I think I'm pretty happy with that. And to be honest with you, that gives us all of our explanations that we need. We can now start to answer our questions. So let's have a look back to what we needed to answer. So we've looked at expected goals and expected points. We have an idea of how our teams actually perform compared to what the numbers suggest. By the look at overall efficiency, strengths, weaknesses, areas to improve is what our final sheet does there, where it has a look at everything that we need to see in there in terms of why teams struggle or do worse or better. We've referenced our data and it's visually attractive. If we go back to our sheet that we had here, I think we've done everything that we need to see. So then you probably would then reply to the email, and I'll show you how we're going to reply to the email, any findings that we found, etc. I say it's kind of hard because it's done as if it is a specific club, but we can sort of give some detail in there. So let's get an email written up. Okay, so to do this, I might just open up Notepad so I can have that open there, and then we can have our data here so I can quickly get everything we need, and then I will just drop in little screenshots and stuff, but let's get it open. Okay, so normally you'd have like screen like side by side with like your emails over here, but I'm doing this on a laptop rather than doing this on like a other device, so it's kind of hard to do that, but we'll do our best. Okay, so what do we need to have a look at first? We want to have a look at this. We've got our XG versus points. Right, I'd start this off with like a please find it. Good evening. Please find attached as discussed. If I can spell attached properly. Good evening. I probably would say I hope you're well, but it's not actually at work. But I hope you're well. Please find attached as discussed. And then I would just start basically saying, when plotting XG versus points, there is a clear correlation between expected goals clear positive correlation R squared value of 0.67 suggests, and now you can have a look at any data you need. So for example here you can see like this is all the stuff you need. So like -1 to -0.7 is strong negative, and then you've got all this. I was almost strong positive. It is if you round it up, but obviously I was 0.67. So we're going to have this as a moderately strong, well, moderate positive in there. So that's what it falls under. It's very close to being strong, which is quite frustrating, but we're going to put it in there. A moderate correlation between creating the chances and finishing higher in the table. And then I'll probably plot it, so I'll get like a little, like if I made it full size, 1 second, so if I just do this, XG versus points, and I'll probably grab this, and I'll just probably screenshot it, and then just pop it in the email. They probably can see this anyway if they go to it, but it just gives a clear indication as part of the email. You can just sort of like pop it in there. I can't screenshot on Notepad, but you get the point. You can just drop that in there. And then I'd keep on going, just saying stuff like Aston Villa were a clear outlier when it came to, or a clear overachiever. They were expected to achieve 51 points, achieved 65. This 13.9 point upgrade, point overachievement, caused them to finish 4th in Champions League spaces, 8 positions higher than the 12th placed expected finish. So like Sunderland were the other noticeable. Overachievers. My spelling is atrocious, by the way. You probably noticed that by now. Overachievers. Despite their 11.97 point overachievement being lower than that of Villa's, Aston Villa's, Sunderland, or they, I'll say Sunderland, finished a whopping 11 places higher than expected. The 7th place finish meant they achieved Europa League football for the first time. However, by the expected data, expected figures, Sunderland should have been relegated. In 18th position. Looking at both teams, it's clear to see Now, obviously, this is quite a long email, so I'd probably do a lot of this as like a presentation as such. If you do an actual meeting, I'll give them like the dashboard and say have a look at it. But if you quiz further, this is the sort of thing I would do. So, if you look at both teams, it's clear to see. Have a look at Villa and Sunderland. It's clear by the data that they both slightly underperformed in an attacking metric. Their attacking metrics. Scored, and I'd say ranking, and then I'd find the rank. So I'm going to put all the teams back in this now. I'm going to show you why. If I do this, then what I can do is I can just rank the whole thing. So Sunderland and Villa actually were top, well, third and fourth, third and fifth actually, so they did well in that asset, but then they also were quite good defensively. So there you go. However, comparing to league figures, they ranked third and fifth respectively. Then I would say something about defensively. So then if I look at defensive rankings, so Sunderland and Villa, you can see that in a defensive ranking, Aston Villa ranked 8th, Sunderland ranked 2nd. This suggests that Sunderland goalkeeper, I'll spell his name, can't be that simple, can it? Let me double check. There's an E. The likely reason for Sunderland's performance defensively, still conceded the chances. But a mix, poor finishing by the opposition, and Roof's heroics or goalkeeping caused Sunderland, helps them to get Europe. It would be interesting to investigate this in more detail, because we can't just jump to conclusions, obviously, and just say that the roofs is the reason, because it might not be. We have no idea. There's so much extra detail that needs to be involved. So we'll just investigate this in more detail, and then I would then investigate that in more detail rather than just saying it and not doing it. Then you can look at underperformers. So as far as underperformers go, I mean, you get the gist. I'm not going to go through it now and do the whole thing. I will, but you want to then have a look at underperformers. Let's have a look. So XG Wolves, obviously, but from a position perspective, Leeds. So Wolves and Leeds are big underperformers in there. We saw Palace actually as well. We could drop Palace in there if we wanted to, but yeah, let's just focus on Wolves and Leeds for that perspective. So what I would do there is I would then have a look at them, those two sides. So Wolves got 15 more points. Yeah. Performers. I'll just say Wolves achieved 15 points points than expected. And now that would have been Wolverhampton Wanderers. Unexpected points finish 35.4 points. Would still have got them finishing just one place higher due to their extraordinarily poor season. Season causing such a gulf between them and the sides above them. And you can see if we have a look at the actual goal analysis, I've got Wolves. Wow. Ranking 18th of 20 teams for both attacking and defensive statistics suggests it was a problem. There was problems. All round. And further investigations need to take place. Similarly, Leeds ranked 17th defensively. So they finished on finishing 9.5 points shorter than expected. 56.5 points that they were expected to achieve. Would have ensured that they finished their Leeds, bottom of this list, 8th rather than 14th, and would secure them a Conference League position, I think. I hope this is helpful. If you have queries, please get in touch. Kind regards. Put your name. I'll then maybe also put here like a few points to note. Although there's quite a few more than a few points to note. And then make these bullet points. But then to be fair, this looks really long because it's like that. But if I just make it bigger, that isn't that long to be fair. And you can have that in an email and just send that over. That's what I would say. Hopefully that gives them a little bit of an insight and gives you an insight to what you would sort of do as a data analyst. And this obviously answers the last part of our thing. So we've had an insight. We've seen, well, we've analysed the data. We've got a visualization. We've then had an insight based off that. And we've been able to make decisions based off that to inform our stakeholder of teams that have over underperformed. Obviously, in our instance, we should have probably done it in a better way whereby the email was sort of related to one football club. So, for example, if we were Sunderland or Villa or Palace, something like that. But we've given an idea of that there. And obviously, people can go in more detail. I hope this has been helpful to show you the exact procedure that a data analyst goes. So, I've started off with the raw data from Understat. So, thank you very much to Understat for giving us the raw data. I really appreciate that. We then took the raw data and played with it with Excel. We then popped it into Tableau, and we were able to make these cool little visuals on the pages that told us everything. So I think the easy thing you can say there is like, when I wrote that email, all I had to do was quickly check the data. We could see everything in a couple of seconds. So, for example, I could see diagnostically why did so well, why Palace struggled, for example, why Leeds struggled, why Wolves struggled, why Sunderland did well. You can sort of see immediately, which is the whole point of these dashboards. Like, you don't have to write anything this big. Like, obviously that's quite a bit longer than it should be, but that's just more written there, so you have an idea how to actually diagnose or how to analyze the data and get the findings from it. So we can quickly see these sort of things here, just a couple of teams. Or if someone was interested specifically in, I don't know, Manchester City, to their season, we do one quick little bit of research here. Let's have a look. So Manchester City, got 4 more points than expected. They finished in the same position just based on the fact that the 3 teams at the top were so much better than everybody else. Slightly overperformed from the XG compared to XG to points, so points compared to XG ratio there in there. And have a look, goals analysis. Manchester City, they're ranked 6th and 3rd in there, so that's actually really good. So defensively, that's probably what kept them going there. Donnarumma didn't do as well going forward, so maybe Haaland didn't do as well as usual. Arsenal, for example, here they actually ranked 13th and 11th, so I don't know how that's happened, but I think Arsenal just created that many chances. The XG4 was the highest in the league by a mile, so naturally they were always going to do that well. And then the XG lowest is like against is the lowest as well, so that's obviously why Arsenal have done so well in there as well. So hope this is helpful and gives you a good idea. If you wouldn't mind subscribing, let me know if this is the sort of video you want to see. I promised you 20 minutes and I've accidentally given you like an hour and 40 nearly, so I do apologise for that, but hope it's helpful. If you'd like to, please comment, like, and subscribe, and let me know if this is more of what you want to see in the comment section down below. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.